All right, buckle up, everybody, because today we're diving deep into a company that's, well, it's kind of flipped the script on how to build a successful business.
Yeah, they kind of thrown out the rule book.
Exactly. We're talking about Berkshire Hathaway, the brainchild of the one and only Warren Buffett.
The Oracle of Omaha himself.
And we've got a fantastic guide for this deep dive. Margin of Trust, the Berkshire Business Model by Lawrence Cunningham.
It's a fascinating look at what makes Berkshire tick, going way beyond just the numbers and the stock prices.
All right, because we all know the success story, right?
Yeah.
But what's really intriguing is how they got there. And the book digs into this unique culture and the values that have, kind of fueled this phenomenal growth.
It really gets at the essence of Berkshire Hathaway.
And it's almost like counterintuitive, isn't it?
Yeah.
You wouldn't think that in this super competitive world of business, that trust would be the cornerstone of a multi-billion-dollar empire.
You'd think it would be all about, cutthroat tactics and outmaneuvering the competition.
Right. But Berkshire, they've proven that a deep reliance on trust can actually be a huge competitive advantage.
Yeah, it's like their secret weapon, almost.
Okay, so let's back up for a second and talk about Warren Buffett himself.
So legend.
Right. The guy starts investing at 26, forms this investment partnership, and bam, Berkshire Hathaway is born back in 1965.
And the rest, as they say, is history.
But here's the thing that always gets me. Unlike most public companies that are obsessed with, quarterly earnings and pleasing Wall Street.
Short-term thinking, yeah.
Exactly. Berkshire operates more like a partnership, like they're in it for the long haul, prioritizing long-term value over those quick wins.
And that long-term vision is key to understanding their success.
So how does this trust actually play out in the real world? I mean, give me a concrete example, because it all sounds a bit, idealistic.
Okay, how about this? The acquisition of National Indemnity back in 1967.
They're an insurance company, right?
A property and casualty insurer, yeah. So Buffett was interested, right. But instead of doing what most companies would do, hiring a bunch of lawyers and accountants to scrutinize every single detail.
The due diligence, right?
Yeah, all that. He does something totally radical. He meets with the owner, Jack Ringwalt, and they strike a deal. Get this, based solely on a handshake.
Wait, hold on a sec. No contracts, no lawyers.
Nope, just a handshake and a very simple agreement.
How simple are we talking?
Like 1.5 pages simple.
You're kidding. I mean, how much money was at stake here?
A lot, even back then. But Buffett trusted his gut, he trusted Ringwalt, and that was enough.
And it worked out.
Big time. National Indemnity became one of Berkshire's most profitable businesses, generating billions in profits over the years.
Okay, that's kind of mind-blowing.
It shows you the power of trust,
Yeah,
right?
It's a huge gamble, but it paid off.
And it's a perfect illustration of how Berkshire operates, how they make bold moves that other companies wouldn't even consider.
So it's not just luck, it's a calculated risk based on trust. So we've got this trust. But it all starts at the top. Right.
Well, yeah, you've got Warren Buffett, the man himself, the controlling shareholder, and the long-standing CEO.
The face of Berkshire Hathaway.
But let's not forget Charlie Munger, the vice chairman. He's like the yin to Buffett's yang.
They're a dynamic duo, huh?
They have this incredible synergy. They challenge each other. They complement each other. It's a real partnership.
So it's not just about Buffett being a genius. It's about having a team that shares this trust and this vision.
It's about having people you can rely on, people who share your values.
Okay, that makes sense. But what about the board of directors? Isn't their role to kind of keep things in check, to provide oversight?
You'd think so, right?
I mean, from what I've read, Berkshire's board is mostly made up of Buffett's close friends and family members. It kind of seems like a recipe for disaster, doesn't it?
It's definitely unconventional.
Unconventional is putting it mildly. How does that even work?
Well, remember, this is Berkshire Hathaway. They do things their own way. And surprisingly, it works. These are people Buffett trusts implicitly. They're not there to micromanage him. They're there to support his vision and protect Berkshire's unique culture.
So it's more about stewardship than, cracking the whip.
Precisely. They're guardians of the Berkshire way.
Okay, I can see that. But how can they really understand the business if they're all so close to Buffett? Wouldn't a more diverse, independent board bring fresh perspectives and challenge potential blind spots?
You raise a good point, but Berkshire addresses this by really immersing their board members in the company culture. They actually interact directly with the CEOs of all the different subsidiaries.
So they're not just sitting in a boardroom, they're getting their hands dirty.
Exactly. They're getting a first-hand look at how things operate, understanding the values that drive the company. It's about building trust from the inside out.
All right, so we've got this tight-knit group at the top, this radical reliance on trust, and this long-term vision, but how do they actually manage all this complexity? Berkshire's massive. They're in everything from insurance to railroads to, like, ice cream.
Don't forget the ketchup.
Oh, yeah, the ketchup. How do you keep that from becoming a bureaucratic nightmare?
That's where the magic of the Berkshire model really shines through. They have a radically decentralized structure,
Meaning,
meaning the CEOs of each subsidiary have a ton of autonomy. They're basically free to run their businesses as they see fit without a bunch of corporate red tape.
so it's like a collection of independent companies operating under the Berkshire umbrella.
That's a great way to put it.
But that's a lot of trust. How do they make sure it doesn't all fall apart?
It comes down to being incredibly selective about the companies they acquire. They look for businesses with strong management teams, a solid track record, and a culture that aligns with Berkshire's values.
So they're not just buying any company that comes along. They're looking for a specific type of fit.
Exactly. They want businesses that can thrive within the Berkshire ecosystem.
Okay, give me a concrete example of how this decentralization actually plays out.
Okay, so back when they acquired Justin Industries,
A boot company.
Boots and Bricks, actually, so it was a mini conglomerate in itself. Buffett realized that these businesses were very distinct. They needed to be run differently. So instead of trying to integrate them and streamline everything under one roof, he did the opposite.
He split them up.
Yep, into independent subsidiaries. He recognized that a one-size-fits-all approach just wouldn't work.
So he let them keep their unique identities, their own way of doing things?
Exactly. He understood that would allow them to thrive.
That's a pretty counterintuitive move.
It is, but it's classic Berkshire. They're not afraid to go against the grain.
So it's like letting a wildflower grow naturally instead of trying to force it into a certain shape.
That's a great analogy, and you see this decentralized approach throughout Berkshire. Take the Marmon Group, for example.
That's a big manufacturing company, right?
Huge. And they've really embraced this idea of decentralization. They use the 80-20 principle, constantly segmenting their operations, focusing on the 20% that generates the most value.
So they're constantly adapting even within these giant subsidiaries.
They have to stay agile and competitive. It's about empowering the people closest to the action to make the decisions.
That makes a lot of sense. Are they the only ones doing this, though? Are there other companies out there that have adopted a similar model?
They're definitely pioneers, but they're not alone. You see elements of this decentralized, trust-based approach in other companies, especially in the insurance world.
Like who?
Allegheny Corporation, Fairfax Financial Holdings, Markel Corporation, they've all embraced this to some degree.
And are they seeing similar success?
It's hard to say for sure because there are always multiple factors at play, but it's clear that a focus on decentralization and trust has been beneficial. It's definitely a trend worth watching.
So trust isn't just some feel-good concept at Berkshire. It's baked into how they operate, how they make decisions. But how do they communicate this to their shareholders? I mean, we live in a world obsessed with short-term gains. Do investors really buy into this long-term vision?
That's a great question, and it gets at the heart of what makes Berkshire so unique. They've managed to attract a really loyal following of investors who get it, who understand their philosophy.
So how do they do that? What makes their shareholder relations so different?
Well, for one thing, think about Warren Buffett's annual shareholder letters. They're practically legendary.
Yeah, I've heard about those, but I've never actually read one.
You should. They're not your typical dry corporate reports. They're actually engaging, even witty at times.
He's got a sense of humor.
Oh, yeah. He doesn't take himself too seriously. And he uses these letters to really explain his thinking, his investment philosophy, his views on the market. It's like getting a direct line to the Oracle of Omaha himself.
I can see how that would build trust, make shareholders feel like they're part of the inner circle.
It's about transparency and building a genuine connection.
Okay, and what about these legendary Berkshire Hathaway annual meetings I keep hearing about?
Oh, they're more than just meetings. They're like festivals. Tens of thousands of shareholders come from all over the world to hear Buffett and Munger speak.
Seriously, what's the draw?
It's a chance to connect with the leadership,
Yeah.
to ask questions, to mingle with other investors who share their vision. It really reinforces that sense of partnership.
So it's like a big family reunion, but for Berkshire Hathaway shareholders.
That's a great way to put it. It's a powerful way to build trust and loyalty, something most companies can only dream of.
I'm sensing a theme here. Genuine connection.
That's at the heart of it.
And it all stems from trust.
Absolutely.
So with all this trust floating around, how does Berkshire approach deal making? I'm guessing it's not your typical Wall Street frenzy of lawyers and contracts.
You're catching on. They're known for their simplicity, their handshake mentality. They believe in the spirit of the agreement, not getting bogged down in legalese.
Come on, really. In the cutthroat world of mergers and acquisitions,
Hmm.
give me an example, something that really shows this in action.
All right, how about the acquisition of Nebraska Furniture Mart back in 1983?
I know that one, Mrs. B's store.
The
Right.
one and only. So Buffett drafts this proposal outlining the terms of the deal, and get this, it's only 1.25 pages long.
1.25 pages to buy a furniture empire.
Yep. And Mrs. B, Rose Blumkin, the owner, she accepts it without changing a single word.
No negotiations, no back and forth.
Nope, just a handshake based on mutual trust and respect.
I mean, come on. That's just insane.
It is, but that's how they roll at Berkshire. It's about relationships, it's about trust, it's about keeping things simple.
Okay, I'm starting to think Berkshire operates in a different dimension. But seriously, how do they balance all this trust with the need for control? I mean, it can't be a free-for-all, right? What about risk management, accountability?
They're not naive, they understand the need for checks and balances, but they do it in a very Berkshire way. Well, they have robust internal controls, especially when it comes to financial reporting. Buffett knows that you can trust people and still need systems in place.
So it's not a blind trust, it's a calculated trust.
You could say that. It's about setting clear expectations, fostering an ethical culture, and giving people the freedom to do the right thing.
So less about rules and more about principles.
Exactly. It's about creating an environment where people want to do the right thing because it's the right thing to do, not because they're afraid of getting punished.
That's a pretty radical concept.
It is, but it's worked for them.
Yeah.
And it extends to their approach to executive compensation.
Ooh, that's a hot topic these days.
It is. And Berkshire's approach is, well, very Berkshire. They don't believe in these elaborate compensation schemes with massive stock options and golden parachutes.
So how do they incentivize their executives?
To keep it simple, they believe in paying people fairly, but not extravagantly. The focus is on building long-term value, not just enriching yourself.
That's a refreshing change.
It is. And it all comes back to trust. They trust their executives to make decisions that are in the best interests of the company, and they reward them accordingly.
Okay, I'm really starting to get this whole trust thing. But here's the thing. Berkshire is huge. A massive conglomerate with its fingers in so many pies. How do they manage public perception? Doesn't that size make them a target for criticism?
That's a great question, and it's definitely one of the challenges Berkshire faces.
What kind of scrutiny do they face? What are the criticisms?
Well, being a major player in insurance, finance, energy, they're naturally going to attract attention, and not all of it's positive. They've been accused of things like bad faith and insurance claims, predatory lending practices, you name it.
Whoa, are these accusations legitimate? Or is it just people trying to take them down because of their success?
It's a mix, to be honest. Some of it's politically motivated, targeting their size and influence. For example, there was this whole campaign against Clayton Homes, their manufactured housing subsidiary.
I remember that. They were accused of taking advantage of low-income families.
Right. But those allegations were ultimately debunked, and it became clear that it was more about politics than actual wrongdoing.
So they're a target because of their size and success. It's like they can't win.
It's tough, for sure. But Berkshire has been very proactive in defending their reputation. They've issued detailed rebuttals, emphasized their commitment to ethical practices, transparency. They understand that trust is hard-earned and easily lost.
Okay, this is fascinating stuff. So we've established that trust is the bedrock of the Berkshire model. But it's not foolproof, right? I mean, surely there have been times when that trust has been misplaced.
You're right, no system is perfect. And even with their incredibly thorough vetting process, they've made some costly mistakes.
So even Warren Buffett isn't infallible.
He's human, just like the rest of us.
All right, give us an example where Berkshire's judgment fell short.
The acquisition of Dexter Shoe back in the 90s is a classic example.
What happened there? Did he just misjudge the company?
He later admitted that he overestimated the strength of their brand and underestimated the impact of foreign competition. It ended up costing Berkshire billions.
Wow, so even the Oracle of Omaha can get it wrong.
It happens. It's a reminder that everyone makes mistakes, even the best of us.
So what other examples are there of Berkshire's trust backfiring?
Well, there was the turmoil at NetJets, their fractional jet ownership subsidiary. It's a great business model, but they had a series of challenges: management turnover, operational issues, increased competition.
So even with a great idea and a trusted team, things can still go south.
Exactly. It highlights the importance of staying vigilant, constantly adapting, even when you have a strong track record.
Okay, now for the big question. Is Berkshire just too big? At what point does that size become a liability rather than an asset?
It's a question a lot of people are asking, and there's no easy answer.
I mean, they've avoided the typical pitfalls of conglomerates, but can they keep it up? Is it sustainable?
Some people point to the downfall of companies like ITT Corporation and Teledyne, these massive conglomerates that just crumbled under their own weight.
They got too big and too complex.
Exactly. But Berkshire's different. Their decentralized model, their strong leadership, their focus on long-term value, it's allowed them to defy the odds.
So what's the secret sauce? How have they stayed afloat while others have sunk?
Well, decentralization is key. By giving their subsidiaries so much autonomy, they've avoided that bureaucratic bloat that often plagues these big conglomerates.
So they're big, but they're also small.
Yeah, it's kind of paradoxical, but it works.
Okay, that's impressive. But they're also a systematically important financial institution, a sci-fi. That comes with a whole other level of scrutiny.
Oh, absolutely. And it raises the question, is too big to fail also too big to succeed?
Good question. I guess only time will tell.
Yeah, it's a tightrope walk for sure.
Yeah.
But so far, they've done a remarkable job of balancing trust with accountability.
Okay, so we've explored the sunny side of trust. But what about the flip side? I mean, there has to be a point where trust ends, where you have to draw a line.
Absolutely. Trust isn't about being naive or letting people walk all over you.
So how does Berkshire deal with situations where that trust is broken? Do they sweep it under the rug to protect their reputation?
Definitely not. Remember the David Sokol situation?
Oh, yeah, the insider trading thing. He was a high-ranking executive, right?
Yeah.
Even considered a potential successor to Buffett.
He was, and that's what made the whole thing so shocking. He bought shares in a company right before recommending that Berkshire acquire it.
Not a good look.
Oh.
So how did Berkshire react? Did they circle the wagons and protect their golden boy?
At first, it seemed like they were downplaying it, maybe out of loyalty to Sokol or maybe just disbelief.
But the public wasn't buying it.
No, they weren't. There was a huge backlash. People were criticizing Berkshire for appearing to condone unethical behavior.
So they had to do damage control.
Big time. They quickly realized that they needed to take a strong stance to protect their reputation and their values. So their audit committee did a thorough investigation and concluded that Sokol had violated their policies.
So no special treatment just because he was close to Buffett?
Nope. They held him accountable.
And what did Buffett do?
He publicly acknowledged that he had misjudged the situation initially, and he condemned Sokol's actions. They even cooperated fully with an SEC investigation.
So they were transparent about the whole thing.
Absolutely. They knew that they had to be to maintain that trust.
What happened to Sokol in the end?
Well, the SEC ultimately decided not to pursue charges.
Really? Why not?
It's hard to say for sure, but the damage was already done. Sokol resigned from Berkshire. His reputation was tarnished. It was a harsh lesson for everyone involved.
Yeah, it shows that trust has its limits, that there need to be boundaries, consequences for crossing those boundaries.
It's about finding that balance between trust and accountability.
Well, this whole conversation has definitely challenged my assumptions about how businesses operate.
That's what we're here for.
It's inspiring to see that success can be built on something as, well, as simple and profound as trust.
It's a powerful reminder that sometimes the best way to get ahead is to trust your instincts, trust your people, and focus on building something that lasts.
Yeah, it really does make you think, huh?
Like, could this work outside of Berkshire? Is it replicable?
Or is it just, the Warren Buffett show?
Exactly. It seems so tied to his personality, his leadership style.
It's a question a lot of people are asking. Academics, business leaders, everyone wants to know the secret sauce.
And is there a secret sauce? Or is it just a perfect storm of factors that came together at the right time?
I mean, there's no doubt that Berkshire has a unique set of ingredients that have made this model work.
Like what?
Well, you've got Buffett's vision, his integrity, his incredible communication skills.
Why, the guy, the legend.
And then you've got Charlie Munger, the wise old owl, always there with a contrarian perspective.
They really balance each other out. It's
Yeah.
amazing. It's a true partnership. And then you layer on top of that a carefully cultivated culture, a long history of success that just reinforces the trust.
Yeah, it's like a self-perpetuating cycle.
But some people say any company can adopt elements of this model, even if they don't have a Warren Buffett running the show.
So is it replicable? Or is it too unique to Berkshire?
I think it's more nuanced than a simple yes or no.
Okay, so walk me through the nuances.
You can't just copy and paste the Berkshire model and expect it to work. It's not a plug-and-play system.
So you're saying there's no magic formula?
Exactly. It's an ecosystem. It's evolved over decades. It's been shaped by personalities, by circumstances, maybe even a little bit of luck.
But surely there are lessons to be learned, takeaways that other businesses can apply.
Oh, absolutely. There's some really powerful principles at play here.
Okay, so what are the key takeaways, the things that other companies can actually implement?
Well, one of the biggest ones is long-term thinking.
Which is rare these days.
It is. Everyone wants instant gratification, quick wins.
But Berkshire, they're playing the long game.
Exactly. They prioritize enduring value over those short-term gains. They're not chasing quarterly earnings. They're not trying to please Wall Street analysts.
They're building for the future.
Exactly. And that takes discipline. It takes patience, but the rewards are huge.
So ditch the short-term obsession. Got it. What else?
Decentralization. It's crucial.
We talked about that. Giving people autonomy, letting them make decisions.
It's about empowering people, fostering a sense of ownership, unleashing creativity. It's about trusting your team, creating an environment where they can thrive.
But doesn't that create a risk of losing control?
It's a balance, for sure. And that's where culture comes in.
Right, that strong Berkshire culture.
It permeates the entire organization, and it acts as a guiding force, even in a decentralized structure.
So the culture provides the guardrails.
You could say that. It's based on shared values, integrity, frugality, a commitment to excellence, a deep respect for the individual.
Those are some pretty solid values.
They are. And it's about creating an environment where people understand those values, they embrace the mission, and they feel empowered to make decisions that are in line with that vision.
So it's about finding the right people, the people who fit that culture.
Absolutely. You can teach skills, but you can't teach values.
Okay, so culture is key, long-term thinking is essential, and decentralization is the way to go. But let's be real, not every company has a Warren Buffett running the show.
Right. He's one of a kind.
So how crucial is leadership in making this model work? Can it work without a visionary leader at the helm?
Leadership is incredibly important. There's no doubt about that. Buffett's vision, his integrity, his ability to communicate and inspire, those have been essential in building this trust-based culture.
So you're saying you need a superstar CEO to make it work?
Not necessarily. I think it's more about creating the right conditions for trust to flourish at all levels of the organization.
Okay, so how do you do that? How do you cultivate trust without a charismatic leader setting the tone?
Well, transparency is key.
No more smoke and mirrors.
Exactly. Open communication, clear expectations, a willingness to acknowledge mistakes, to listen to concerns, to be vulnerable.
So authenticity is important.
Absolutely. People can spot a phony a mile away. Be genuine, be real. That's how you build trust.
Okay, so transparency is the foundation. What else?
Empowerment. Give people the authority to make decisions and then hold them accountable for the outcomes.
But isn't that risky?
There's always a risk, but you can't let fear paralyze you. Mistakes will happen. It's inevitable. The key is to create a culture where it's safe to admit mistakes, to learn from them, and to move on.
So it's about creating a culture of psychological safety.
That's a good way to put it. People need to feel safe to take risks, to experiment, to fail.
And that's how innovation happens.
Exactly. And it all comes back to trust.
All right, I'm starting to see the bigger picture here.
Yeah.
But it sounds like a lot of work.
It is. It's a journey, not a destination. And it requires constant attention, constant nurturing, but the rewards are huge.
Okay, I'm sold. But let's go back to a key point we touched on earlier. Trust as a moat, a competitive advantage.
It's an interesting concept, isn't it?
It is, but it's intangible. How do you measure it? How do you quantify its impact?
That's what makes it so powerful. It's not something you can easily replicate. It takes time. It takes consistency. It takes a genuine commitment to building relationships.
So it's like a secret weapon.
You could say that.
Yeah.
And the results speak for themselves. Berkshire's track record is undeniable.
Okay, so break it down for me. How does trust translate into a tangible competitive edge?
Well, for one thing, it attracts top talent. The best people want to work for a company they trust, a company where they feel valued.
Right, they want to be part of something meaningful.
Exactly. And they're willing to go the extra mile for a company that treats them with respect and fairness.
So it's a magnet for talent.
It is. And it also fosters loyalty among customers and partners.
People want to do business with companies they trust.
Absolutely. They're willing to pay a premium for quality, for reliability, knowing that the company will stand behind its promises.
So it's about building a network of trust, extending that trust outward.
Exactly. It's a virtuous cycle. Trust begets trust. It leads to stronger relationships, greater collaboration, greater success.
Okay, I'm seeing the ripple effect.
Yeah.
What else does this trust-based moat do for Berkshire? How does it impact their bottom line?
Well, for one thing, it reduces transaction costs. Think about all the time and money wasted on complex contracts, legal battles, endless
All
negotiations.
right, all that red tape.
Berkshire avoids a lot of that because they operate on a handshake mentality. They trust their partners. Their partners trust them. It streamlines everything.
So efficiency through trust. I like it.
And it also allows them to make bold moves, seize opportunities that others might miss.
Because they're not afraid to take risks.
They're not afraid to trust their instincts, to move quickly, to make decisions based on a handshake. They can outmaneuver their more cautious competitors.
Okay, so you've convinced me. Trust is a powerful competitive advantage. But the world is changing. It's becoming more complex, more uncertain. Can a trust-based model really survive in this new environment?
It's a valid concern, and it's one of the biggest challenges facing any trust-based organization.
It seems like trust is becoming more and more scarce these days.
It is. There's a lot of pressure to deliver short-term results. The pace of change is accelerating. Trust in institutions is eroding. Social media is amplifying negativity and cynicism.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
tough environment out there.
It is. But I believe that's why trust is more important than ever. In a world where everything is constantly shifting, where you're bombarded with information, trust becomes an anchor, a source of stability and resilience.
So you're saying the forces that threaten trust also make it more valuable.
Exactly. When you can't rely on traditional structures or institutions, trust becomes the glue that holds everything together.
Okay, that's a really interesting perspective. So what's the prognosis? Can a model like Berkshire Hathaway's thrive in the 21st century? Or is it destined to become an endangered species?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And I don't have a crystal ball.
I figured as much.
But I do believe that the companies that embrace trust, transparency, a long-term vision, those are the ones that will be best equipped to navigate these turbulent times.
So it's not just about doing good, it's about doing well in the long run.
Precisely. Trust is not just a moral imperative, it's a strategic imperative. And the companies that understand that will have a significant advantage in the years to come.
Okay, that's a powerful message. But before we wrap up this deep dive into Berkshire Hathaway and its very unconventional approach to business, I want to bring it back to you, the listener.
It's all about making it relevant, right?
Exactly. So what stands out to you? What resonates from this exploration of trust, decentralization, long-term thinking? And more importantly, how can you apply these principles in your own life, your work, your relationships?
Take a moment to reflect on that. Is there a margin of trust you can cultivate in your own sphere?
It might be in your team, your company, or even in your personal interactions.
It's a journey, for sure, but it's a rewarding one.
This whole deep dive has really been eye-opening for me. It's challenging my assumptions about how businesses should operate.
It's inspiring, isn't it?
It is. To see that success can be built on something as simple, yet as profound as trust.
It's a powerful reminder that sometimes the best way to get ahead is to trust your gut, trust your people, and focus on building something that lasts.
And on that note, we're going to take a quick break, but we'll be right back to delve even deeper into the world of Berkshire Hathaway. Okay, so we've talked a lot about the good stuff, the upsides of this trust-based model, but what about the potential downsides? Is there a point where all this reliance on trust could backfire?
It's a good question. No system is perfect, right? And even Berkshire Hathaway, with their incredibly thorough vetting process and their emphasis on character, they've had some missteps along the way.
So even they've gotten it wrong sometimes.
Yeah, even they're not immune to human nature, right? And sometimes that trust, well, it can be misplaced or even abused.
Give me an example, a situation where their trust backfired.
Well, the David Sokol episode is probably the most well-known.
Oh, yeah, that's right. The insider trading thing. He was a
Yeah.
high-ranking executive,
That's
right?
right. Yeah.
Like considered a potential successor to Buffett even.
Yeah, he was a real up-and-comer, and that's what made the whole thing so shocking. He bought shares in Lubrizol Corporation right before recommending that Berkshire acquire the company.
So a clear conflict of interest.
Yeah, and it raised all these questions about whether he had used his position for personal gain.
Not exactly ethical.
No, not at all. And for a company like Berkshire, with their reputation for integrity, it was a real PR nightmare.
So how did they handle it? I mean, did they try to sweep it under the rug?
At first, it kind of seemed like they were downplaying it, maybe out of loyalty to Sokol or just disbelief.
But the public wasn't having it.
No, they weren't. The backlash was swift and fierce. People accused Berkshire of condoning unethical behavior, especially from someone so high up in the company.
So they had to do some serious damage control.
Oh, yeah, big time. They realized that to protect their reputation, their values, they needed to take a strong stance.
So what did they do?
Their audit committee did a thorough investigation and concluded that, yeah, Sokol had violated Berkshire's policies.
So no special treatment just because he was close to Buffett.
Nope, they held him accountable.
Good for them. And
Cool.
what about Buffett? What did he do?
He publicly admitted that he had misjudged the situation initially, and he condemned Sokol's actions unequivocally, and they cooperated fully with an SEC investigation.
So they were transparent about the whole thing.
Absolutely. They knew that they had to be to maintain that trust.
What happened to Sokol in the end?
Well, the SEC decided not to pursue charges.
Really? Why not?
It's hard to say for sure, but the damage was done, his reputation was tarnished, he resigned from Berkshire, and his career pretty much went down the drain.
It's a tough lesson for everyone involved.
It is. It shows that even in a company like Berkshire with this culture of trust, you still need boundaries and consequences for crossing those boundaries.
Trust but verify.
Exactly. You got to find that balance between trust and accountability.
Well, this whole conversation has really made me think, it's inspiring to see that success can be built on something as simple and profound as trust.
It's a powerful reminder, isn't it?
It is that sometimes the best way to get ahead is to trust your instincts, trust your people, and focus on building something that lasts, something with integrity.
Well said.
Well, folks, that's it for our deep dive into the fascinating world of Berkshire Hathaway. We've explored their unconventional approach to business, the power of trust as a driving force, and the challenges of maintaining this model in a world that's, constantly changing.
It's a story that continues to unfold, and I think it offers some valuable lessons for all of us.
Absolutely. Whether you're running a company, leading a team, or just navigating your own personal life. The principles we've talked about today, trust, transparency, empowerment, long-term thinking. These are principles that can guide us all toward a more fulfilling and successful journey.
Couldn't agree more.
So we hope you've enjoyed this exploration of Berkshire Hathaway and their unique approach to business. It's a reminder that sometimes the best way to get ahead is to trust your gut, trust your people, and focus on building something that matters, something that lasts.
And remember, the margin of trust might just be the real key to unlocking lasting value, not just in business, but in all aspects of life.
And that, my friends, is the bottom line. Until next time, keep diving deep and keep the trust flowing.